On this vote, the ayes are 239, the nays are 183, a majority voting in the affirmative. Previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a record vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
So the House has moved on to a vote on the rule for debating a short-term extension of FAA programs. Joining us is Catherine Wolf with Congressional Quarterly. Why is Congress doing another short-term extension of FAA programs?
Well, the basic reason is because they can't agree on a longer-term bill. There's a couple of provisions that they've had really a lot of problems agreeing between the House and the Senate on. It sounds like they're down to really just a few, but one of the main ones involves a change in the way that union elections are done. And, President Obama has threatened to veto the bill over it. And it's also, but it's something that Republicans really want. So, in a way, it's the kind of thing that appeals to core constituencies of both parties, and it's difficult to see what the middle ground is.
Why are opponents opposed to including these changes?
You mean to changing the way the union rules work? It would basically, the way that it's structured, the National Mediation Board made a rule change, I believe it was last year, that removed the stricture on the way that union elections were conducted to make it easier to organize. And there's a provision in the House version of the multi-year FAA bill that would basically overturn that ruling to put it back to the way that it was. So it's about, how easy it is for a union to organize elections.
Well, final passage is expected today. How much support will this bill get here in the House?
I'm sure it will pass. I don't know exactly what the breakdown will be, but I would be surprised if it didn't pass.
What are its prospects in the Senate?
I would say slim to none. It only takes, of course, in the Senate, it only takes one person to block a bill and object to it. And the particular change that's envisioned in this extension is something that rural communities really dislike, and in the Senate, rural communities have a lot more power than they do in the House. And in particular, West Virginia is one of the states that would basically have their airport subsidy cut potentially. This House version of the extension bill, and so Senator Rockefeller he doesn't like that.
If this bill isn't ultimately approved in the Senate, what can we expect to happen with FAA programs this coming Friday? Friday's the deadline. Could this stop airport and airline traffic?
No, I don't think that it would. I mean, basically what you're talking about is furloughing, I believe, about 4,000 employees at the Federal Aviation Administration. But safety critical employees would not be affected. So, for instance, the air traffic controllers would stay on the job. Flights would continue. But there are some real world consequences for things like airport projects and the people that process, runway improvements or things like that are not going to be around in their offices to do that and move money out the door to these projects. So in terms of the economic impacts to airport projects and things of that nature, they'll be significant.
What's the status of the negotiations to reconcile the House and Senate versions of a longer-term reauthorization?
Well, things right now are pretty blocked up. I mean, if you listen to the two main negotiators on the House side, is Mr. Mica, who's chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and on the Senate side, it's Senator Rockefeller, who's chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. They're both basically suggesting that the other one is the one responsible for not negotiating in good faith. And in some ways, it seems like at least the suggestions that they're both making is that this decision lies with their leadership, their respective leadership.
Katherine Wolf is a staff writer with Congressional Quarterly. We thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
And the House continues with a vote on the rule. General debate is expected to follow, and a vote on final passage is expected today. This is live coverage of the House here on C-SPAN.
Or 242, the nays are 178, a majority voting in the affirmative. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. House will be in order. Members, please remove the conversations from the floor. Please clear the well and the aisles. House will be in order. Majority side, please remove your from the floor. House will be in order. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on H.R. 2018 and include extraneous material in the congressional record.
Without objection. For what purpose, the gentleman from Wisconsin rise?
Mr. Speaker, that was 2553.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2553, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to extend the funding and expenditure authority of the Airport and Airway Trust Fund to amend Title 49 United States Code to extend the Airport Improvement Program and for other purposes.
House will be in order. Members, please remove your conversations from the floor. Wisconsin seek to call up House H.R. 2553?
Yes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 357, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Petrie, and a gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Costello, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
And I would like to insert in the record an exchange of letters between the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the Committee on Ways and Means.
Without objection.
And Mr. Speaker, for the 3rd consecutive Congress, we're working to pass a long-term reauthorization of the FAA. This year, both the House and Senate passed their own reauthorizations, but unfortunately, negotiations with the Senate have slowed, and it's necessary for us to pass another extension to enable the FAA to continue to operate. This bill is a short-term extension of FAA funding and programs through September 16th at current levels. This extension also includes important reforms to the Essential Air Service program. These reforms could result in as much as $20 million in savings for the American taxpayer. The first reform provision was adopted unanimously by the Senate and is included in its reauthorization bill. And that provides that only airports that are 90 miles or more away from a large or medium hub airport would be eligible to participate in the Essential Air Service. 90 miles away. People can obviously, and in most instances, would prefer to drive 90 miles rather than taking a connecting flight. It seemed like a sensible thing. We hadn't thought of it when we passed our original legislation. The Senate did, and we are including their reform in this, so we're in effect acceding to the Senate. In the case of one airport under the current program, which is within 90 miles, we're paying a per-passenger subsidy of $851, and the nearest hub, as I said, is 82 miles away. That's $10 per mile subsidy. So the second provision in this dealing with Essential Air Service caps the subsidies for each passenger, federal subsidies, in addition to the fares they pay, at $1,000. During this economically difficult time, it's not possible to justify using taxpayer dollars to pay for a subsidy of $1,000 per passenger at an Essential Air Service airport, and subsidies can frequently exceed that amount. If there are any difficulties with that, there's other language that would allow the executive branch to waive this, this provision. The EAA provisions included in the extension are limited and sensible reforms that target the most indefensible of the subsidies. If we can't do this, what can we do, especially after 23 or 24 extensions that have been holding the whole program and the efficiency of improvements in the air infrastructure of our country hostage. The House-passed bill actually phases out the Essential Air Service program for all but Alaska and Hawaii, so we're not insisting on that at all. We're modifying that and going along with largely what the Senate itself has been suggesting in this regard. So these provisions are a compromise, and ESA will continue to be discussed as we work to finalize the bill. As Congress tries to find a way forward to address deficit and long-term debt issues, if we can't put an end to these extravagant subsidies, then we'll never be able to rein in spending where really hard decisions are necessary. While I continue to hold out hope that we'll reach a compromise with the Senate in the near future, it's necessary to pass this extension to provide the FAA with continuing authority and provide needed ESA reform. Ultimately, we must get back to the negotiating table to work out a long-term FAA bill. Short-term extensions are not the right way to run such an important agency, so I'd urge my colleagues to support the resolution and reserve the balance of my time.
Reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to H.R. 2553, the Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2011. This is the 21st extension of the FAA authority to fund airport improvement projects at current levels through September 16, 2011. Regrettably, unlike all of the prior 20 extensions of the FAA authority, this bill includes a policy rider eliminating essential air service eligibility for 13 airports in small and rural communities. The issue today is not whether we support the Essential Air Service program or not. We should not be legislating on this extension. We should have a clean extension so that we can move it over to the Senate and make certain that the FAA, in fact, is funded through September 16th. There have been no hearings on proposals to reduce EAS this Congress and no hearings on this bill either. Members with affected communities should be allowed to make their case to the House and offer amendments to the bill that would preserve service to their communities. Instead, this extension is inviting opposition and creating major problems because the Senate has indicated that it will not accept this extension. Policy riders should be left out of the extension and taken up by the House and Senate conferees if, in fact, we ever have conferees appointed here in the House. Earlier this year, the House and Senate both approved comprehensive FAA reauthorization bills. In February, the Senate passed the FAA Air Transportation Modernization and Safety Improvement Act by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of 87-8. Passage of the Senate bill was widely applauded by both labor and industry and stakeholders, and it was estimated that the bill would create at least 10,000 jobs. In contrast, in April of this year, the House passed an extremely controversial H.R. 658 by a vote of 223 to 196. The narrowest vote margin of House passage of an FAA reauthorization bill in nearly 3 decades. The bill has been harshly criticized by labor and industry stakeholders because it would undermine aviation safety, slash FAA funding, and destroy good-paying airport construction jobs. Since Chairman Mica introduced the House FAA authorization bill, we have been warned, and we have warned actually, that it contains a number of controversial poison pill provisions that seriously jeopardize the enactment of a long-term reauthorization act this year. The failure to enact a long-term FAA reauthorization act is costing taxpayers millions of dollars and the nation tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. Short-term stopgap funding authorization have stymied airport construction, job creation, and the FAA's overall ability to efficiently administer its programs. Further, multiple FAA extension acts have created uncertainty among local airport officials regarding the total amount of federal funding available this year for airport construction. As a result, state and local airport officials are advancing fewer projects, less new construction is moving forward, and fewer jobs are being created. Last week, the Airports Council International of North America sent a letter stating that if Congress did not extend the airport grant program through September 30, and I quote, "Safety and security projects will go unfunded and the much-needed jobs associated with these projects will not materialize," end of quote. So I am puzzled why the majority would disregard this warning. It is time that we move forward and that we get a clean extension so that we, in fact, can move to conference and get a bill that is agreed upon that we can bring to the floor that can be signed by the President. For the majority of the House who claims to care about creating jobs, reducing bureaucracy, and listening to the business community, this extension bill goes out of its way to create unnecessary red tape and problems. The FAA needs the certainty, stability, and direction that a long-term reauthorization act provides. Further, the American people and the American public deserves a long-term FAA reauthorization act that will create jobs, improve safety, and modernize our infrastructure. We need to stop playing partisan games, quit posturing, pass a clean extension through September 16, appoint conferees, and in fact reach an agreement on a long-term FAA reauthorization bill. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield such time as he may consume to the distinguished chairman of the Full Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, John Mica.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for such time as he may consume.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank our chairman of the Aviation Subcommittee, Mr. Petri, for his leadership. Also, Mr. Costello, who formerly chaired the committee and now is the ranking member. I want to thank him for his dedication to our nation's aviation system, safety, and also Mr. Ray Hall. You couldn't ask for better partners. Mr. Ray Hall is the Democrat leader of the committee, and we have a great working relationship. And we've had a great working relationship to try to move forward legislation like a long-term reauthorization of FAA and other major transportation legislation that's been mired in delay. And quite frankly, my colleagues, I find myself very frustrated being here. Now, this is the 21st extension. I complimented, and don't let me not compliment the staff on both sides. We have great professionals that deal with this. The Congress is fortunate, the nation's blessed to have the kind of leadership we have with staff working on these important issues to move what accounts for about 8 to 9% of our GDP. That's the aviation industry forward, setting the policy, the programs, the funding formula, all those things. These folks are responsible for, and they're good stewards of that responsibility. So I thank them in advance. And I also want to thank Senator Rockefeller, Mr. Speaker, and others who have worked with us trying to bring this to a conclusion. Kay Bailey Hutchinson, the ranking Republican on the Senate side, worked in good faith to try to get this, this unexcusable delay in passing long-term reauthorization. So that being said, again, I find myself so frustrated. This is the 21st delay. We have a former chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Costello. Mr. Petri now chairs it. He's been active on this. I was chairman for 6 years of the subcommittee, all wanting to do the same thing, and that's move forward with reauthorization. The irony of this is I chaired the subcommittee on aviation in 2003 when we wrote the last reauthorization, and we did that in some 6 months, and there were controversial provisions. That 4-year bill expired in 2007. We have not passed a reauthorization, even when the other side had humongous numbers in this chamber and control of the other body, at one point I think 60 votes, to get something done. Nothing was done. 17 extensions under their watch, and quite frankly, I'm embarrassed that this is the 4th extension, but I'm trying to do in 6 or 7 months what couldn't be done in almost 5 years. And we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done one way or the other. Now, we have also done 3 what they call clean extensions to move this process forward. And we did need some time, and you have to be reasonable because this is a new Congress. The other body passed, the Senate, in February, their bill. We passed the first day in April our legislation, and here we find ourselves on the 4th again, extension, which is regrettable. And all this, I say, my colleagues, could be resolved, I think, in a matter of an hour. There's been great work in discussions, informal discussions, in what we call pre-conference, where some of the principals get together and discuss the terms. All these issues are not new. Mr. Costello and I, Mr. Oberstar and I, We had discussed this. In fact, I think the other body took up the pending legislation from last time. My goodness, it was pending for 48 months, so there are no new issues here. But again, we find ourselves stalled in the process. That being said, I call on the members to pass this extension. This is a clean extension, except for one change, and it has two parts. The first part, it deals with Essential Air Service. That's the program that underwrites, again, routes for air service from local communities. This is a program that started at about $50 million a decade ago and now is approaching $200 million. We had a vote here in the House, and we decided to sunset that program, I guess with the exception of two of our exceptional states, Hawaii and Alaska, who have some unique geographic limitations on service. But the other body passed a provision, the Senate passed a provision that would eliminate service based on distance. I think it's 90 miles, and it affected some 10 communities. And Mr. Speaker, I'd ask unanimous consent to insert in the record at this point the 10 communities affected.
Without objection.
Okay. So this is language that the other body passed, and we are including. Now, I've made one exception, and it affects 3 airports, 3 states, Nevada, Montana, and New Mexico. And the provision I put in is that no state or no airport operation that has service where the subsidy exceeds $1,000 a ticket can receive that subsidy. I don't think that's unreasonable. When we're here, we've got from now until the beginning of August to get our nation's finances together. I want to see folks come down here and vote to continue subsidies for more than 1,000. One of these subsidies, and I won't state the state, but you can figure it out, is $3,719 per passenger. That's obscene when our country's on the verge of debt crises and disaster. So if I have to take the entire reauthorization and we continue, now this extends through the 16th of September. I'm putting everybody on notice that each time we will pass reauthorization if we have to do it extension by extension. So we're starting with this small part of what the other body has passed, and I'm adding what I think is a reasonable provision. $1,000 subsidy in itself is almost obscene if you ask the average member of Congress. In fact, when I went to the Rules Committee, one of the members on the other side of the aisle was stunned that we were paying those kinds of fees. Now, don't come here and tell me that we don't legislate on extensions. In fact, the other body put an entire bill of regional safety legislation on one of the past 17 extensions. So we've done this before. We need to work together on this. I would implore members of both sides of the aisle to support this, because this is in the people's interest. This has to move forward. I don't know of any other mechanism. I certainly am not going to allow this fiasco to continue. And certainly I don't want the FAA to close down at midnight on Friday night. And that won't happen. Essential services will continue. Air traffic controllers will be at their job. There may be some people furloughed, but it is not my fault. It will be the responsibility of the other body who does not take this up and pass it. They will be furloughing people and putting people out of jobs. And if you want to see people work, then let's pass the FAA bill. It has the next generation air traffic control provisions. It has safety provisions in here that are long overdue. So, again, I'm a bit frustrated. I want the best for the nation. I want the best for our air traffic control system, our aviation system, and people, thousands of people who depend, not just working in the federal government, but in this important industry to move forward. So that's my say at this point. Again, I'm so disappointed, but we're going to find one way. I may not be the most powerful member, I may not be the most intelligent member, I may not be the highest ranking member, but I'll tell you what, I am a persistent member, and we will pass reauthorization one way or another, and we're going to get it done. So I appreciate everyone's indulgence in working with me on this project. I'll yield my time back at this point.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the distinguished ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Rehar.
Gentleman from West Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I commend our ranking member, Mr. Costello, Chairman Mica, Subcommittee Chairman Petri, my senior senator, Jay Rockefeller, in the other body, and his ranking member, Kay Bailey Hutchison, for the tremendous efforts they've put in this legislation and so much other legislation important for our infrastructure in this country. I recognize those on the majority side that their heart is in the right place. Perhaps those whose pay grade is above them have different opinions and different agendas on this legislation, and perhaps that's the reason why we need to appoint conferees, as the other body has done, and move forward and let the normal process work its will on this legislation. But instead, we're here to consider the 21st short-term extension of FAA programs and authority, and the 4th short-term extension this Congress, as our chairman has just stated. 21 extensions. It's now old enough to drink. Instead of celebrating, however, this should give all cause for concern. This past Saturday marked the 100th day since the Senate appointed conferees on long-term FAA reauthorization. The sun has risen and set over the Capitol more than 200 times since then, and House and Senate negotiators have boiled down the remaining issues to just a few. But the House Republican leadership still has not appointed conferees to move this process forward, despite the fact that, as Chairman Mica has acknowledged to the press late last week and even in his comments here today, the remaining differences are so few they could be resolved by conferees in 20 minutes. So I ask, what is the Republican leadership waiting for? We find ourselves now faced with the need for a 21st extension. Unlike the 3 other extensions this chamber has passed this year, this extension contains a policy rider that would cut 13 small and rural communities from the Essential Air Service program. There have been no hearings on proposals, as Ranking Member Costello has stated, to reduce EAS, and no hearings on this proposal in particular. That said, I would note for the record that the provision of this extension dealing with EAS is an improvement over the proposal in the House-passed reauthorization bill that would have cut the EAS program altogether for the lower 48 states. There's no question that a sunset of the program would not pass the Senate and be enacted, and at least my Republican colleagues have stepped back from the brink on that particular proposal. However, I am disappointed that instead of appointing conferees to address the future of the EAS program and other outstanding issues in this long-term reauthorization, my Republican colleagues have instead chosen to force a major policy provision into an otherwise clean FAA extension bill at the last minute. Holding hostage the negotiations is not the way to move the reauthorization process forward. In fact, it is almost guaranteed to set us back in our efforts to work with the other body and reach agreement on a long-term reauthorization. I object to the tactics used by my Republican friends and colleagues, and I implore them to act in good faith, appoint conferees, and move toward enactment of a long-term reauthorization bill that will put Americans to work and improve the safety of our skies. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
I yield such time as you may consume to Mr. Mica from Florida.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you so much for yielding back again. The question's been brought up to try to shift the responsibility for, again, the possibility of the other body not acting here to the question of the Republicans not appointing conferees. I might point out, just for the record, in the 110th Congress, this is for an entire 2 years, the Senate never passed an FAA reauthorization bill, so we never even got to pre-conference. We never got to the issue, so they never appointed conferees. There was no bill passed. And again, huge majorities on both sides. In the 111th Congress, the House and Senate passed FAA reauthorizations and pre-conference for 5 months without naming conferees. They never named any conferees. This process of pre-conferencing is part of the bipartisan nature of our committee and our work in bicameral discussions. As I said, they've been excellent. The staff has been working well. These aren't new issues. The other side controlled the process for some 4 years. The bills have been out there for some time. I have the commitment from the leadership when we are ready to go and having resolved most of the issues, and again, there are only a couple, and everyone knows what they are, I think that they can fall in place. But we need the leadership of the other body, in fact, the leader of the other body, to step forward and act in a responsible manner in dealing with me or the leadership of the House or someone and responding to a major impediment that we have to move this process forward. Then we will, our leadership has said they will appoint conferees. We can sit down, resolve those issues in a public forum, and pass this. We could do that tomorrow. So, again, it's not the question of appointing conferees. And if I have to take more strident measures to get this job done, we're going to get the job done one way or the other. As I said, this is the beginning. Now, I had a Republican ask me to modify the language that the Senate passed before the Rules Committee. There's tape, you can all see it, it's a part of the record. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to take what the Senate passed. The only difference here in the Essential Air Service is what I provided language that says that if you get more than $1,000 subsidy, it affects 3 airports, that will not be allowed. That's the only thing standing between us and shutting down part of our Federal Aviation Administration. Yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Illinois.
Yield myself 10 seconds.
Gentleman's
just to make a
recognized.
point to the chairman, one is that the 5-month period that he referred to, one, the Republicans in the Senate, as he knows, blocked our ability to appoint conferees. In particular, the senators from Tennessee put a hold on it until the Colgan families made their point to lift the hold and move forward. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the former chairman of the Aviation Subcommittee, the distinguished gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. This used to be a legislative body. I'm not quite sure what it is now. The way traditionally the House and the Senate resolve differences is the House and the Senate pass a bill. Most people learn this in their high school civics class. Then each side appoints conferees, and they get together and hash through the differences. Actually served on some of those conference committees. Have actually voted across the aisle on some provisions of bills in those conference committees. But not now. What they're saying here is, after they've worked out all the differences with the Senate, and only in the way that their bill passed the House, that is, my way or the highway, or my way or your plane's grounded, however you want to look at it, then they will appoint conferees to a meaningless conference on something that's already agreed to, and then we'll come back and pass their bill. It doesn't work that way. It won't work that way. And this is just not a simple problem, because if the FAA has to close down all of its capital improvement programs Friday night, very expensive, 4,000 people laid off, thousands of projects across the country that would put construction workers to work and suppliers to work, won't happen. So this isn't a no-cost playing games kind of thing that they're doing here. And what's it all about? Bottom line is it's about whether or not labor should have the right to organize. That is what hung up the bill in the Senate before, because they wanted to have a level playing field. We wanted to have a level playing field between providers of railroad and airline services and allow people to actually organize to be represented. And, of course, Federal Express hated that, and their two senators held up the last conference in the last Congress, plain and simple. Now, they're on the same wavelength here. The Republicans here want to overrule the National Labor Relations Board and impose a rule for organizing that says you have to have a majority of people voting and a majority of the majority voting, i.e., if you apply the same rule that they want to the United States House of Representatives, not one member of this House would have won their election. Not even some people who are in, like, totally partisan districts, Democrat or Republican. No one would have won because no one got a majority of the votes. That's the rule they want to apply to labor. So if you want to organize a union, there's 100 people. First off, you've got to get 50 positive votes, 51 positive votes. Anybody who doesn't vote counts as a negative vote. So if we apply those same things, we would never have federal elections in this country. You would never be able to elect anybody to anything. And they say, oh, well, that'll be fair for labor. That's what's hanging up this bill. Their anti-labor fervor, their hatred of working people, and their right to organize. It's absolutely obscene that they're going to do that and cost us more jobs by not having a capital improvement program.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
I would just point out to my colleagues that the provision that was changed by the National Labor Board, to which my colleague referred, has been the law of this land for a generation. So it's not anti-labor fervor at all. It's more regular order. And how much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman from Wisconsin has 12.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Illinois has 19.25 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Wisconsin. I
yield such time as you may consume to the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Mike.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my colleagues. Well, you just heard the comments, and again, couldn't have a better friend or compatriot on many issues and many improvements that we've made. Transportation and the committee together, Mr. DeFazio, the gentleman from Oregon, but he said this used to be a legislative body. And yes, it was a legislative body before the other side took over 4 years ago. And they closed down quite a bit of the process. Now, has this been an open process on the FAA reauthorization? And I submit to you it has been, from the committee. Now, go back and check the committee records. We held more votes on this FAA reauthorization in committee than we held probably for the last 6 years. I know certainly for the last 4 years on that one piece of legislation. On the floor, we had an open process. I think there were some 30 amendments. 23, I believe, were made in order. So unless they were duplicative or the Rules Committee took them out, it was an open process as opposed to a closed process with closed rules that, again, we had on major pieces of legislation for some time. So this has been an open process. The only projects that will be stopped will be those stopped. The House is going to act. The House is going to pass this. And if we have to pass additional extensions, as I said, with the rest of the reauthorization, piece by piece, we are going to pass reauthorization to set the policy, the programs, the projects, and the priorities for our aviation industry and for FAA. But the only projects that will be stopped are projects that, if the other body doesn't act on this extension, they will be responsible for. And again, the only difference in the extension, and we gave them 3 clean extensions, and this is a clean extension with their provision that passed with their language unanimously in the other body. The only difference is I added 3 states, actually 3 airports, that subsidize in excess of $1,000 per ticket per passenger. And again, when the nation is going down the tubes almost literally because of debt, we can't make one little tiny change and move this process forward, keep people working, put safety provisions that are in this reauthorization that we don't have now and move forward with it. There's something wrong. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, at this time I would yield to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson. 4 minutes.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the leadership on the committees and simply appeal to my chairman, Mr. Mica, to come, let's reason together, because this has been a committee that has a history of reasoning together. Without me standing here going through it, you are very aware of what the most objectionable parts to this extension is. If we are serious about passing an extension, let's pass the extension and deal with the other issues at another time. Yes, it's been since 2007, and it's been because of the battling back and forth. You're either pro-labor or anti-labor, but we are ruining the lives of workers. We are subjecting safety to the whims, and we are messing up projects and wasting money by allowing this bickering to continue. I would simply appeal to our chairman to please come to the table and let's pass a clean extension bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady from Texas yields back her time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just thought, as long as we're spending some time talking about the modest cleaning up of the series of kind of earmarks that have accumulated over the years in the Essential Air Service program, which was referred to by the chair of the committee, as it started out as a true essential air service to help provide access to the outside world to very isolated communities. It's gradually been kind of earmarked, gone from $50 million to some $200 million cost, and they're not isolated, but they are subsidized, and it's done God knows why. Let me just mention a few of the areas that would be affected by these modest changes, saying that it has to be more than 90 miles from another airport, and secondly, to try to cap the subsidy unless it's varied somewhat by the Secretary at $1,000 per seat per flight. One that would be affected is currently being subsidized, Jonesboro, Arkansas, 82 miles from Memphis. Can't drive 82 miles. I want the federal government to provide service. Athens, Georgia, 72 miles from Atlanta, getting subsidized. And this, you know, we're worrying about big billions and dollars of subsidy. If we can't even do this, where do we start? They say a big journey starts with a single step, and we're not willing to take, even in this small area, the most modest of steps. Hagerstown, Maryland, north of here, 78 miles from the Dulles airport. It's getting a subsidy of over $800 per flight, and it's right near Baltimore as well. There's Glendive, Montana, 60 miles from another essential airport in Montana. Just 60 miles, you could drive over to Sydney, but no, they're asking for $1,357, $1,357 subsidy per passenger flying from Glendive under this program. Alamogordo, New Mexico, 89 miles from a hub airport in El Paso, but if this continues, getting a $1,563 per $1,500 subsidy instead of driving 89 miles. You can rent a car. I mean, this is a profligate, hard to defend use of the taxpayers' money, and yet people are talking about closing the government down or the FAA down unless they can spend $1,500 dollars to subsidize a flight when you can drive 89 miles to another airport. This is what we're talking about, and this is why my constituents and many others are wondering when we're going to get serious out here about taking the modest steps over and over again to get our financial affairs and our stewardship of the federal taxpayers' money under better control. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, at this time I yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, I thank the gentleman from Illinois for yielding. Madam Speaker, you know the debt limit isn't the only deadline that is upon us. Here we are facing Friday, D-Day, for the nation's aviation system. This is the third Congress where our committee has passed this bill. Most of the sections of the bill do not have major disagreement. Now we go for a bare 2-month extension. On the policy rider, all I've got to say is why make it more difficult? When you know that when it goes to the other body, it's either going to be stripped out or we're going to be facing another terrible deadline. I appreciate that negotiations have been going on all along with staff. I do believe, though, that the failure of the majority to appoint conferees is a problem in this bill, because once members are appointed, it seems to me that sends another signal and gets another set of people in it to move the bill. So the conferees do matter and should have been appointed. These are difficult issues, and they shouldn't be left to linger. Next generation, air transportation. If we don't modernize our air transportation, we're going to be left behind, even developing countries. Runway safety, we've had run-ins in airports right here where there are major airports. Aircraft noise, and we always have this issue of whether or not the perimeter rule is going to be extended or violated again. Well, you know, I oppose increases of the perimeter rule, but I oppose more not sitting down to figure it out with conferees at the table. We've got the air ambulance operation issues, the oversight of foreign carriers, and of course the notorious National Mediation Board issue, where what constitutes a majority could only be an issue in this Congress. Is the majority of votes cast, or is the majority of those in the class or in the whole group? If it's a majority of votes cast, then of course it's what all of us in the Congress use every 2 years to get elected. There are matters in this issue, there are matters in this bill that the Congress has to do anyway that would be especially useful to do now as we recover from the Great Recession. If we were to pass this bill providing jobs, which is something we have to do anyway, now when it would count would matter very much to the entire country. Let's reauthorize the entire bill and quit short-term extensions.